Hello, and welcome to True Horrors with Meg and Rachel. Every week, we discuss a horror film and the true stories that inspired, influenced, or bear striking resemblance to them. Be warned for spoilers and adult themes. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Meg.
And this is True Horrors.
You're very small in the frame right now, Rachel.
I'm sitting on a chair in front of my bed so that I don't get real stiff, and because last time we recorded, I stood up and almost immediately fell over because I was so cramped up. So I got a chair.
I felt like that yesterday because I ended up sitting in the same place for a really long time. I can't tell what this is. I can't tell if this is the intro of the episode or if we haven't started yet. Like, we usually start by saying hello. It's like a cold open before the music starts.
Well, I already told you I'm like high on Benadryl right now. So,
hey guys, it's Meg and Rachel, and we're having a time. Welcome to the podcast.
We've been having a time for a full week now.
Okay, so there's a commercial that I forget what it's about. I know it's a commercial. So commercials are usually about like some weird concept, and then they're like, buy Rolos. But there's one that's like, it's been quite a decade the past 2 years.
Yes, I keep seeing it on Hulu.
Yes, I've seen it too. And every time I'm like, damn, commercial. It has been, though.
It has been.
I don't know if we've told you guys this, but my office, which is where I record from, it's slanted. So I'm in a rolly chair. So I'm constantly in fear of rolling backwards away from the computer. But I have like a footrest that I put my feet on. So I anchor myself down. It's all fine. It's a great time. So welcome. Probably, I would have to say, one of our roughest openers. Like, oh my God. Probably the worst opener we've done. Welcome to it.
Change nothing. I want this to be recorded for history.
Yes, our biographers will enjoy it. Okay, so not to pick on Rachel, but Rachel picked this movie, so I'm going to pick on her.
I mean, I think we said last week, neither of us had ever seen it. And
no,
I picked it because first of all, we were specifically trying to go for classics this season. Mm-hmm. Last one, we picked a lot of movies that we liked. This one, we were trying to go for classics. And I knew this one had a specific story it was based on. I had never seen it, and it's fine. Better than Friday the 13th was.
I mean, a little background. I was kind of putting off watching this movie because I was really sort of scared of it. Not scared in a sense of it was going to be scary, but a lot of early Wes Craven stuff is real graphic, really graphic. And I was a little bit concerned about I was like, am I in the mood to watch, y'all know I don't love slasher, and I definitely don't love what's considered the torture porn aspect of that. So you're not really going to get a lot of those on this podcast. Those, because neither of us are into them. So garbage. I was very concerned. And then I was watching it and I was like, this movie's so fucking boring.
Yes.
Nothing. I don't want to watch people be horribly mutilated, but there were certain points I was like, I don't even know what's happening right now. I don't am I just supposed to guess? I guess. Some things need to happen on screen. Some things need to not cut away from. I'm sure it was a budget thing, right. But there were seriously times where I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. Again, did this happen? I literally went to Wikipedia when this was over and read the Wikipedia summary and then figured out plot points. Because not to jump ahead, and obviously all of our things have trigger warnings, but the younger sister is raped. Mm-hmm. And I really wasn't sure which one of them raped her or if either of them actually did rape her. And it's supposed to say that only the second one did.
How are we supposed to get that?
How are we supposed to get that? And that's the thing is I was I sort of got it because I felt like she was struggling with him. And then Mars, I think it's Mars and Jupiter. Mars was like, nope, you don't get to. And Jupiter then destroyed it. But then I was like, but did Mars actually? And again, I do not want to see anything like that. But I felt like there was no discussions. I was left being like, what? There was even a point when Papa, whatever,
he's Jupiter. The
he's
father
Jupiter.
is Jupiter. Yeah.
Who's the bald guy? They're all planets. He's not.
It's Mars, Pluto, and Mercury. Mercury's
okay,
the
then
guide.
he's Pluto.
Yeah.
Because Mercury's the one who the true hero of this. The Beast, the true hero of this movie, KOs. But no, when he was talking to the dad's severed head, I literally was like, is he actually alive? Like, until they panned out, because I literally couldn't figure out what was happening. Like, I was like, oh, was he actually living, or did they eat him? Are they eating him while he's alive? Like, anyway, that's more of a global thought than step by step. But first of all, I literally was going into this movie like, okay, I have to prepare my soul for what's about to happen. And then I was like, like, whatever. Like, again, you're right. It's a better movie than Friday the 13th. But it's not a good movie. Yeah. It's not a good movie. No,
I don't understand how it got this classic status.
I don't either. Also, with it not being a good movie, what is it with movies in the 70s and thinking that I'm going to give a shit about characters they don't develop? Why would I care? I don't care about any of them.
I was actively rooting for them to get eaten after the father dropped a racial slur for absolutely no reason. I was not expecting that.
They were all terrible. It was very weird. Like, it was weird because, like, we don't know anything about them except they're going to California and sort of own a silver mine.
No, they're looking for a silver mine so they can take some silver.
I thought it was that they were, like, willed that mine, which is why they were like migrate. Exactly.
The mom might have said that she bought her husband. Like, I know it was for their silver anniversary.
Yes, which she bought.
Is great. Like, I think the idea of, like, going to a silver mine on your silver anniversary is a good idea, but I don't know what they were doing, actually.
Again, much like with Friday the 13th, I know nothing about them, and they have and what I don't get is these movies aren't really necessarily shorter than modern day horror.
Right.
Like, yes, the Conjuring movies are really, really long, but most are between 90 to like 110 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, but I care about them. Like, I don't understand how they're using their time, because it was like the little bits of conversation they got. I was like, well, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. But let's start from right at the jump. How none of them seem to have any kind of self-preservation or sense of danger, which is also not a single one of them. There's not even one of them they're clearly a family, because they all have the same stupid point of view in that sense. Like, no one is like, hey, this place is sketchy. This guy is basically begging us to get back on the main, which that's different. Like, I don't know if you've seen the Wrong Turn movies. They're pretty brutal, but like the Wrong Turn movies, that guide role is leading them there.
Right.
I always thought that was the same thing, but he's actively like, don't do it. And they're like, oh, he just wants the gold for himself. And I'm like, I hope you all die.
Yes. I was also surprised that he was trying to get them to go away, because that trope comes up. Like, it's such a common trope that it comes up in Cabin in the Woods. Trying to lure them into the trap. He's trying to do the opposite. Like, I wasn't expecting that, at least.
The Harbinger. That's what they call him. Yes. Because it is like, it's so clearly sketchy. There's something clearly wrong. And none of them get it. I just wrote, seriously, what is up with these people?
Also, were they just lying about there being a military base there? Like an Air Force base there? Or what was that about?
It's supposed to be that's why they're like that, is like nuclear testing.
Okay.
So you do see the plane, because you do see a plane at one point, and the brother-in-law does go and get stuff from basically where the base throws garbage. But yeah, and it seemed like what the grandfather was saying was that the military was going to start coming in here to do. So it's like almost they're being gentrified almost like by the military. And so the military was going to start was moving closer and closer to the land of like the Hills Have Eyes family.
Okay. And the thing is, I really expected that, because they kept talking about it, I kind of expected the Air Force to come in and save them at the end, and they just didn't. We talked about it for the first half of the movie, and then we just never talked about it again.
It was a real Chekhov's gun, because you did expect that was going to be how it ended, was that they were somehow saved by the military, or even indirectly. Like not necessarily, like just they just show up and are like, what the fuck? I wrote at the very beginning, this baby and one sister will live.
Yeah.
I definitely thought there'd be a higher body count, but I was not wrong about those. Like I was like, okay, one sister and the baby. Wow, I do not like the dad.
Nope, hate him.
I get why his own men shot him twice. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? He was shot twice by his own men. And I was like, me.
Like, good. You had it coming.
So weird. And that's another thing. Like, I wrote, just like with Friday the 13th, I'm like, what was the dialogue for this movie? What is the dialogue? Because at one point, the young boy who is, I'm guessing, supposed to be in his late teens, if not mid-teens, makes like a sex joke at his mother.
I don't remember that, but I'm sure it did happen.
And I was like, what is the dialogue? He made a penis joke at his mom. Gross. And like,
weird.
That's not anything anyone would do. Like between that and then it was at the same time when they told the story about how Beast killed another dog.
Yes.
Which was also
and they all
so
laughed
weird
about it.
Yes. And I was like, okay, so like, who are the protagonists? Because that's
like,
the thing.
When are you people going to get eaten?
Because that's the thing is that they, I get what they were trying to establish. They were trying to establish that Beast is ferocious. They were trying to establish that Beast is a silent until he's ready to kill.
Right.
But like they could have said that with like, oh, remember when he killed a coyote? Like, remember when he killed that like coyote that was trying to murder us or get the baby? Or like they could have done it in a story that wasn't like, oh, dad was so mad he had to pay for this dog that our dog murdered. Like it was so weird.
So weird. And they were like mocking the woman who owned the poodle. Like,
yes.
I wish more of them had been eaten.
It was so weird. And it was very strange. Also, another thing is that the Hills family, whatever we're calling them, the planet family.
The planet family.
The galaxy family.
The solar system, Meg.
Fine. But they didn't trap them.
Mm-mm.
That's also it. Is that like they were not actively pursuing them. They were like, oh, let's see what happens. And then they crashed the car because they were idiots. And they were like, oh, all right. But they weren't, there was no sense that they were trying to like stop them. The grandpa didn't leave them there. And they didn't like put the rabbit in the road. Would have been funny though if it was like a trained rabbit.
Yes.
I can't remember what the moons are called for Jupiter, but it could be one of the moons.
Io is the only one I can think of.
Also, can we talk about the music choice?
Oh my God.
It was very odd. Was it like in the public domain? Is that why this music got chosen?
It would have to be. Again, it's not as bad as the quote unquote music in Friday the 13th, but it's still garbage. Like, not to jump ahead, but why did they take the baby? They kept talking about how great that baby was going to be. But of all the people there, not to be that person, but the baby has the least meat on it of all the, like they left 4 perfectly good corpses that they could have eaten. And they took the baby, which is all fat and no muscle.
It's weird because I definitely felt like they took the baby as like a plot device to try to establish how evil they were, that they would eat a baby. But you're right. It made zero sense. I originally thought they were taking the baby as in like, oh, now we have a baby and this baby is going to be like, I don't know, grow up to like be one of us. Like that's how because like, you're right. It doesn't make sense. It's just like weird shorthand to establish how evil they are, but it doesn't make logical sense considering they're starving out there.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any kind of logical sense. Although, because it seems like Jupiter had told Mars and Pluto to kill everyone and then they didn't. And so I don't know if they thought everyone was dead there and they would just go back and get the bodies. But like, see, there's a lot of stuff like that doesn't make any sense. It's just like they want us to know that they're scary. And like, that's something you really need to show and not tell. Like for me to think. Also, the lighting in this movie was something. Like there was some real lighting choices.
Yeah.
It's really baffling. I wrote this movie is really baffling.
It really is.
I also... in the beginning, I was like, I need 2 family trees stat because it takes so long for them to establish how anyone is related. Also, the actor who plays Pluto, I feel like he is literally on the cover. Like, that's why I thought he was Jupiter, because I think he is more what people think of when they think of this movie is the actor who plays Pluto. And I don't know why that is, but he was when I went to go watch this movie on stream, he was the cover.
Right.
Not Jupiter. So it's why I thought he was Jupiter. They're baffling choices. They leave the trailer so many times when they shouldn't. Because there really isn't an established like way for them to get into the trailer. They set a trap for them by letting the dad on fire.
Right.
So if they just all been like, we're not fucking leaving the trailer. Like, it doesn't seem like, I mean, obviously they would have eventually broken the windows, but they would have been able to keep themselves a lot safer.
Yes. Because the thing about the desert is, especially at night, like that's when all of the animals are active. Like they spent so much time talking about rattlesnakes. Do you know when those snakes come out? They come out when it cools off. Like you don't want to accidentally stumble on a rattlesnake or a scorpion or any of those things. Like just stay in the damn trailer.
Do you know how mad I would have been if we hadn't seen a rattlesnake in this movie after all they talked about it? When they got to the end, I was like, thank God, where are these rattlesnakes we've been talking about? Like, fuck it. Also, like, am I wrong? Are rattlesnakes different than any other snake where it's like, if you don't fuck with them, they're not really interested in your life?
All snakes are like that.
All snakes are like that. So like to be scared of rattlesnakes, I'm like, you don't really need to be scared of them unless you're fucking with them.
Well, the issue is if you surprise them, like if you're walking around and you come upon them and they're not expecting you, they might bite you, which is why like when you go hiking around areas where there are snakes or bears or like most predators, you just have to make like a lot of noise because they'll hear you and they will fuck right off because they don't want to be anywhere near you.
Good snake facts, by the way. But there were a couple of times where the son said something and it really, like his acting choice really surprised me because I was like, you don't sound scared. Like you're saying that and you don't sound like you're scared. You sound more like frustrated. And it's like, it feels really weird for the situation. He was also wasting his bullets. They were all wasting bullets, which I hate in any kind of show. When I'm just like, oh, we're just throwing those bullets away. Like,
the thing is, I don't know much about guns, but one thing I do know is that handguns are not long range weapons.
No.
So as that person was, whoever it was, even was running away in the dark, I was just like, stop shooting at him. He's gone. You're not going to hit him. Like, save those bullets for when he gets real close to you. It's a short range weapon. You're not holding a rifle. Like, also, we had no reason to believe he actually knew how to use that gun just because his father obviously did because he was a cop, but like that doesn't mean that he trained his son how to use a gun.
No, also, it was very much like he's a man, so we're going to give him the gun. Yes. And I'm like, but he's an idiot.
Yes, they all are, but still. Also, why were they revolvers? Like, I don't think they give cops revolvers. Like, I don't think they have done that since like 1890.
No, the gun choices were very odd. Again, it felt like those were just the guns someone on the crew had. And like, it just, a lot of stuff felt like that. But also when Doug comes back, everyone is just having the worst time. And Doug is not getting the vibe.
Yeah.
Like, also the son is just endangering the family by not saying that Beauty was gutted until like, what? Halfway through the movie, because that's the thing. She was not torn open by an animal. She was very clearly gutted by a human person. Right. And he just keeps that the fuck to himself. And it's like, because of that, they're able to sneak into the trailer to assault his sister, murder his mother, like all these kind of things. I don't think I'm in the order of that correct, but I know they locked him out of the trailer. And he doesn't knock, which is very weird. Yes. Knock on the goddamn door. They go to the baby at certain points. And that baby's face just says she knows exactly what's going on, both in the sense of the story and as a baby actor who does not want to be a part of this.
I wrote the same thing in my notes.
I wrote, did he try knocking? And then this is the part where I wrote, I'm not saying I want it to be more graphic. I'm saying there are ways to make it not graphic, but also have me as an audience member know what is happening at any given point. And I really didn't. And then like when I read the Wikipedia page and they were explaining different scenes, I was like, I didn't even realize that's what was happening.
I went to the Wikipedia page too, but I did not read the plot summary. I was just like reading genre stuff because it's an exploitation film. And I was like, aren't exploitation films supposed to be more violent? And then I stayed up until 11 o'clock reading about different subgenres of exploitation films because that's what I do. But like, basically with horror movies, you have two like basic strategies that they use to make it scary. One I would argue is not scary. And the one that I would argue is not scary is a lot of violence and gore.
Yes.
The other one is suspense. And they did neither with this movie.
Yes, that's it. You've hit the nail on the head. That's why this movie was so boring.
Yes.
Because it was just like, even though I also am not afraid of gore, I couldn't decide if I want to say scared or afraid there for a second. Scared of gore. I at least understand that as a genre. And sometimes it's interesting. Like, I don't know if it'll be a season 3 movie because we've already mapped season 2, but I like the Saw movies. Like, right. I like them for what they are. The recent one that's going to come out now, which is kind of a reboot of the franchise with Chris Rock, looks real good. Like, looks really good. And he's taking kind of a jump. Yeah. It's one of those movies that's been really postponed because of the pandemic, but it looks like it's getting a release date.
Gotcha.
And I don't know that he's done a ton of drama. Like, I just don't think of him that way. So it's an exciting role, you know, but that's because like, obviously there's like 17 of those movies. So they're not all winners, but they are smart and they do have something they're trying to say beyond just torturing. And there is the gore and there actually is some suspense because, again, I don't know how much you remember from when I've told you about the movies, but the whole thing is all the traps are supposed to be survivable. So you as an audience member know the person could live.
Right.
So you don't know if they're going to. And so like that kind, like I am not scared of the Saw movies, but I did watch them and I was like, this is entertaining. And when they all fit together, like puzzle pieces, dun-dun-dun. They're interesting. Like, and they tell a very interesting, like, oh, wow. I don't know that I necessarily would have enjoyed them as much if I wasn't watching them. Like, I basically binged them over like a week because I wouldn't have remembered some of the stuff. And you know, my memory.
Yes. Cause I think I've seen the first 3 of them, but like one of them I definitely saw in theaters. And it's like, it never made any sense to me because I was like, I know like characters come back, but like, I didn't remember who they were. And also we are just like, going on such a Saw tangent right now, so we need to stop and get back on track.
Oh yes. Anyway, so I'm
Instead
just
of
saying
talking
that
about these good movies, let's go back to talking about this terrible movie I made us watch.
I'm just saying that although I am not scared of gory movies, I can find them interesting. And this one, I just like, again, if they were going to go in that direction. I also really hated the choice to have, is it Brenda? Like whatever the sister who lives name is, just scream throughout the entire last quarter of the movie.
Yeah.
Eventually she stopped screaming and actually came up with a really good plan. Right. But it was like, it was distracting that she wouldn't stop screaming. Like, stop screaming. I mean, I get it as like a realistic choice.
Right.
But like, it's really bad for a film because it was like, I was like, Jesus, like, stop it. Like, I don't know what's going on.
I mean, I think we gave up realism a long time. I think we gave up realism with the premise. So,
yes. And then I wrote when dog killed Mercury, LOL. The Beast was the true hero of this movie. The Beast killed 2 of the antagonists.
Yeah, he did. And he like had a whole plan for both of them. He's got some great cognitive reasoning skills. Better than the family, I'd say.
They killed his mate, so he fucked him up.
Yep.
But like this whole movie just should have been from the dog's perspective is what I'm saying.
That would be a much better movie.
They do come up with good plans at the end.
Yeah.
Then Brenda just keeps screaming when he goes to check the body. I'm like, he has to check the body because he's probably not dead.
Yes. It's horror movie rule number 1. Make sure your antagonist is dead.
I'm seeing if there's anything else I wrote. Oh, it is Brenda. Because I wrote, we could have gotten more background about Ruby, about Brenda, about Doug, any of them. I'm not even saying the brother because fuck him, but any of them, a little bit more of a characterization. Right. And can we talk about how it just like ended? Like what, did they run out of money? Like
run out of film? Like that's the end of the roll. We're done here.
okay, when did they unchain her? Because they made a point of showing us that she was chained up because she tried to run away, and then she was no longer chained, and that was never shown.
Her punishment was over.
I just wrote, what the fuck is ascending? I'm done. I've got nothing more to say.
I've got nothing else to say about this movie.
It was a bad movie. I literally and now I'm scared because I know we've got more movies that neither of us have seen.
I know, right?
Coming down the pike, because we did try to have the theme for this to be more movies that were like had title recognition.
Yeah.
And I think season 3 is just going to be anarchy. Like, I think it's just going to be whatever we want all the time.
I hope so.
Just like whatever. Because I'm like, whatever. It like 2 of these movies we've watched now, I've been like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Classic or non-classic? I've got nothing to say. I would definitely survive this movie because neither of us would have gone off the path in the middle of the desert. Like,
no, that's a bad idea. You can't tell how far away things are in the desert because there are no landmarks. Like, it gets hella cold at night, which they all seemed really surprised by. Like,
yes!
Is it not just common knowledge that it gets hella cold in the desert at night because there's no cloud cover to keep the heat in? Because like they weren't even driving on a road. Like, it's not that they were driving on side roads. They were just straight up driving on like a dirt path.
We'd survive.
We'd totally survive. So again, I chose this because the story has a direct inspiration, which I'm going to mention up top is straight up. It's made up. It's not a real story. This did not happen. But it is presented as true. And again, it's what inspired Wes Craven to write it. It's the story of Alexander Sawney Beane. I used the Newgate calendar via like a law library from Texas. The Newgate calendar was where they used to like publish hangings and stuff like that from Newgate prison, but it kind of seems to have gone off the rails at some point because that's where this story like kind of comes from.
Just to be clear, Rachel, because at one point we were discussing this and you were talking about like, well, everyone knows this story. And like, I don't think a lot of people do if they're not really into either history or really into that. So I just want to say, when you're saying it's not real, you mean you're going to explain what you mean by that. Like, as far as it's like, it's a myth.
Yes, it's a legend.
It's a legend. That, because when you were like, it's a story, but it's not real, I was like, let's define what we mean. Because like we do inspirations on that. This isn't like when we talk about hauntings where we've already said we go on record as we're presenting it the way that the witnesses who were there are going to say it. This is something that's just bullshit, but it is the inspiration.
Bullshit. My other source was BBC Scotland. So Alexander Beane, also known as Sawney Beane, was born in East Lothian, Scotland at some point. Nobody knows. Maybe during the reign of Queen Elizabeth, back when King James I was just governing Scotland, or possibly during the reign of James VI. And this is right away how you know this is not a true story. Oh, I drank a lot of wine before I wrote this, so I did a lot of editorializing, and I'm going to kind of try to bring that energy. I had meant to drink the wine while I was writing it, but this is when I was having all those technology issues I told you about. So I had already had a lot of the wine at this point. But anyway, this is how you know right off the bat that this is not a true story, because it either happened during the reign of one of the most famous English kings of all time, the one who has his own Bible, the one who helped fund a lot of Shakespeare's plays, or during the reign of some jackass I've literally never heard of. So whatever. His parents worked as ditch diggers and hedgers, which a hedger is someone who creates or mends hedges. I looked it up just to make sure. And Alexander was not into this. He did not want a life of labor. So he ran away. He ran west. And he met a lady, and her name was Black Agnes Douglas. And I wrote, the only thing they loved more than each other was robbing, murdering, and eating people. It didn't say that anywhere. Again, that's me editorializing. And they moved into a nice little cave on the west coast of Scotland, which was in maybe Girvan, Ballantrae, maybe somewhere else. Nobody knows. Also, it's not real, so they didn't live anywhere. And they spent 25 years living in this cave that nobody could find and never ever went into town. But people all around the area just kept disappearing without a trace, except when random hands, feet, and limbs would just wash up on the beach. So obviously people freaked out. There were I mean, they don't say witch hunts, but, a lot of people were arrested and hanged. But, they all like maintained their innocence until their deaths. Until this young couple coming home from a fair got attacked by a family of now 45 people. Keep that number in mind later. It's gonna come back. So the wife is like immediately killed. They apparently slit her throat and disembowel her. Maybe with their bare hands. It doesn't really say. I'm going to need more details about how this happened, if you want me to believe it. But then, like, the husband's able to hold them off until, like, another group of people coming back from the fair arrive, and they're able to fight them off. And the 45-person family of cannibals tries to take the wife's body, but they're not able to. They have to leave her behind so they can get away. So they go to the king. Again, either James the First or the Sixth, up in Glasgow, and 3 to 4 days later, the king and an army of 400 men arrive. Again, if any king were personally involved in a manhunt, you think that would be written down somewhere. And they search everywhere with no luck. They bring bloodhounds out, and the bloodhounds find this cave that they are just like hot, like they're indicating that there are people in this cave. Now, here's the only part of the story that I really enjoy, which is that the cave at high tide is what's up.
Did the writing say either James the Sixth or James the First? Because before he was King James the First of England and Scotland, he was James the Sixth. You know that English history is I just didn't want it to be one of those things that, so like when he was just the King of Scotland before because he was Elizabeth the First's heir. Before Elizabeth died, he was James the Sixth, and then when he got to be King of England and Scotland, he was James the First. So it was just, you kept, once you said it, I was like, did you say the Sixth? But this is my area of thing. Rachael is American history, specifically the American Revolution. I love this. Like James the First is like, he's the end of it though.
Yeah.
Like I barely care about Elizabeth and Anne. Like I'm really more like back all the way through the War of the Roses. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so definitely I feel like though it's this king they're talking about, either when he was just the King of Scotland or 20, 30 years. Like that's the issue. If he was James the Sixth, that was way before he became James the First. So there's a huge, was he the King of England and Scotland, or was it when he was just the King of Scotland? And either way, he wrote a whole Bible. He loved catching witches, but he didn't mention the cannibals.
Exactly.
Like he would have written a second book called How I Killed Cannibals with My Bare Hands Through the Power of God. But anyway, that's it.
I'm not sure. It wasn't totally made clear to me. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's because I think that one came, like the first or sixth was coming from BBC Scotland, and they were expecting me to know that already. I think even if I were from Scotland, I shouldn't be expected to know that kind of bullshit. You know how I feel about royalty.
I know. That's why I'm here to be like, well, it is my bullshit. Only though, up until that point, I don't like the modern. I just like War of the Roses and the Plantagenets when they were all just absolutely feral and insane. Yeah. Like, but if you were listening to this podcast and you are also like me and really into English history and you were like, that's the same person, we got you. Like, well, our knowledge is either overlapped or we're like with a Venn diagram when it comes to random knowledge.
Yep.
So you were saying that you like high tide.
Yeah. So at high tide, the entrance to the cave is supposedly hidden.
I want to live there.
I know, right? That I'm way into. I'm way into that. I'm also just like way into like the geography of Scotland. That's my shit. Oh yeah, I wrote here, dream home, capital D, capital H, underlined. So they go inside this cave and it's full of body parts. Some of them are hanging, some of them are pickled. There's gold, silver, various valuables, clothing. And I wrote, this is where it falls apart for me. Aside from where it fell apart before, when we don't exactly know when it happened. If they never go into town, what are they doing with all of this stuff? Like, why do they need the gold and the silver if they're not going into town or if they're not living like a high life? And also, where'd they get the pickling supplies if they never go into town? So at this point, obviously all the family's down there. The family consists of Sawney, or Alexander, and Agnes, the parents, 8 sons, 6 daughters, 18 grandsons, and 14 granddaughters, which would all be produced via incest. And also, if you add that up, it adds up to 48, not 45. So, get your story straight. They capture the family, take them to Edinburgh, execute them without a trial. The men were dismembered and bled out. The women had to watch, and then they were burned. And that's the end of that story that is so obviously not true. Because when did it happen? Why isn't it written down anywhere? A lot of historians speculate that this is like some sort of propaganda because it was during a rebellion in Scotland. It was the Jacobite Risings, which I don't know anything about, and I was not getting into it. It was like 10 p.m. And like I said, I had a lot of wine at that point. Also, Black Agnes is like a nickname of like a real person who was either involved in that rebellion or maybe involved in some other rebellion. So that's another reason to think this was probably propaganda. But I mean, I'm not saying it's not propaganda, like anti-Scottish propaganda, because there is a lot of tension between Scotland and England, and there's a lot going on there that I don't know a whole lot about. But this is just like one of those stories that I feel like once you hear it, like you don't forget it, and you're going to tell other people about this story. Like, so maybe it's propaganda, or maybe it's just one of those stories that's so crazy, like that it just becomes like an urban legend, like, the hook in the car door, or the guy following the woman home with his brights on kind of thing. So,
well, and that's the thing, is that in the time, just a little bit pre-Shakespeare, or maybe during it, like people told stories the same way that we do. And so like, it doesn't necessarily, for me, I know you have trouble with the pickling supplies. For me, it's the fact that 45 people couldn't, like, this guy heroically fought off 45 people.
No,
like,
a group arrived and helped him fight off the 45
but before that,
yeah.
but
well, he was on a horse.
Like, was the horse also 45 people just standing on each other?
No, the horse is just really tall.
Like that's the part that gets me. Yeah. I mean, maybe some of the grandchildren were like children, but either way, that's just an overwhelming amount of people to have them not have their asses kicked.
Yes.
Like is the thing. Like also, like even if there was a group that came along, a group of 40? Because that's the only way I see this working out for them. Like that's the part. And yeah, I understand that there are deep roots as far as propaganda against Scotland from the English, because they were trying to take them over and imperialize them. So obviously they want to make it seem like they're monsters in some way. But I also sort of just see this as just one of those scary stories you tell, right? Because it sounds like, I mean, yes, King James is in it, but it also sounds like a lot of the people who rose up were also Scottish, like they were also part of the city.
Yes.
So it's more like the idea that, and did you know what happened? And the king, and this was a king who very much believed in witches and things like that. So like, it would fit into that. If there was ever going to be a king that would be like, I want to go fight those cannibals, I feel like it would have been James. Like, I just feel like Elizabeth wouldn't have put up with that shit. She would have been like, yeah, I'm going to be farming that out to someone. Like, I don't do that. But yeah, all of these kind of like cannibal, incest, living in the hills thing, they all come back to this story.
Yes.
But the reasons for it existing are sort of.
Yeah. This story also heavily influences Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it has that same incest cannibal vibe. I didn't know how to say that without being weird. It just is.
It just is.
Anything else, Bear?
Nope.
All right, guys. So this was our The Hills Have Eyes episode. Next week, we will be doing Child's Play, the OG. Not the 2019 version, the 80s version.
Yes.
And that's my pick. We're going to talk about Scary Dolls.
Hate it.
Love it.
I feel like it's revenge for making you watch these past two movies. I mean, we'd already planned it all out, but like deep in your soul, you had to have known.
I came back in time just to plant this movie in because I'm like, those movies are shit. And she's going to have to watch this terrifying doll. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.